Officer of Viom Network. Thank you so much, Syed, for talking to CNBC-TV18 exclusively. You know, the big question I need to ask you straight up is, after ATC takes in management control, what happens to the current management of Viom Networks?
Ritika, thank you for having us. I think, you know, the proposed transaction is clearly a testament to what the current team of 1,400 Viomites have accomplished, right, in the last 3 years, and created so much value from a loss-making company 3 years back to a sustainably profitable company now. And therefore, the current management team is clearly at the center of the future business that's going to be run in India.
Okay, so there won't be any change as far as the current management is concerned of Viom Networks. The big question that most employees have when once acquisition goes through is what happens to the employees? Would there be any kind of layoffs whatsoever going ahead?
I think very clearly, Kritika, right now the whole team will be focused on getting the regulatory and government approval, which should take 4 to 6 months. Until such time, the closures happen, both the companies will be run as separate entities.
Okay.
So right now the focus is clearly to continue the good work that the team has done and deliver a great financial year again, where we are looking at almost doubling profits all over again. So that's the focus right now. None of us really are thinking 6 months ahead at this point in time. We'll deliver a great year. Close the transaction, which should happen by the end of this financial year, and only then will the integration process start in the next financial year, potentially, after all the approvals. And that's when we will sit down, and clearly our focus is that there's so much potential in India right now, with the data boom happening and the second wave of telecom growth happening. I think we should just focus on growth, and that's what we are focused on, and I'm sure the combined entity with 56,000 tower base will focus on just growing rather than worrying about reductions. I don't think that's the focus, and that's not the purpose of such a transaction as well.
Okay, fair enough. So by the end of the financial year, as you said, the transaction should be completed, sir. In that case, what is the kind of integration that will entail going forward in terms of operations as well? Because as you said, 56,000 towers, very close to your immediate competitor Bharti Infratel. What happens then in terms of the integration after the deal is completed?
I think in terms of systems, processes, reporting, logs and everything, a lot of work will have to go in. The people integration part will obviously be critical in this as well. And that's the focus which will start post all the approvals come in. And it will take a fair amount of time. And a deal of this size, which is, well over 20,000 crores of enterprise value, these things take time, several quarters and sometimes a year as well. So that's the journey we'll have to travel, probably starting next financial year.
Okay, let me ask you in that case, the Shrey Infrastructure Management just a short while ago indicated that there would be a merger on cards. Do you have any clarity with respect to how the merger would pan out? Of course, as you said, there will be necessary approvals and regulatory requirements, but at the end of it, the eventual aim is a merger. So what is the kind of timeline that you can give me? How will the merger work? Would this be within the next 1 or 2 years?
So I think the way logically it needs to work, and it will work, is that the shareholders who are continuing will have to agree on a final swap ratio that they will have in the merged entity, right? And that will happen post a reverse due diligence of the other entity as well. And then when the final valuations are put on the table, they will agree to swap ratios, and then the combined entity and the structure will take place. That, you're right, these things will take several quarters to do, potentially. So it will take that much time. Okay,
a rough timeline on when a merger could go through, pending approvals?
I think, Kritika, optimistically, the beginning of next financial year, post the approval. I think it should run concurrently with the approval process, and beginning of next year, if all going well, we should be in a position to do that.
Okay, so let me then understand operationally what happens as far as your, you've been competing against Bharti Infratel. Yes, there's been a significant gap, but if I'm correct, in terms of the valuation, we haven't had a chance to do the math yet, but in terms of the overall equity valuation, you'll be very, very close to Bharti Infratel. So tell me, give me a sense of how the combined operational and market share growth will be for the combined entity.
You know what this integration will bring post-closure is a lot of local expertise, and what Team Viom has accomplished in the last 3 years, combined with global insights and global financial power, and put the two together, and you really will have one of the best independent infrastructure companies in the telecom space anywhere. And I think that's the power that will see us through to much better incremental market share. And I think the combined entity should be clearly looking at least 25 to 30% of incremental market share from India.
35% incremental market share, fair enough.
25%, yeah.
Okay, so in terms of operational growth in that case, once ATC comes on board, how do you foresee the rental yields coming down? Because that's been a concern for the entire sector.
Rental yields have not come down for us, and I don't think most of the sector. The data tenancies which come as loading rentals is incremental EBITDA, for all the tower companies. So rental yields for us also year on year keep going up because contractually also there is an increase that happens for all the tower companies. So I don't see them getting impacted in any significant way.
Okay, Mr. Safawi, I've been talking to Viom management for quite some time. The sense over the last couple of quarters was Shrey Infrastructure had also spoken to us, indicating that there is a need for fresh liquidity for Viom to be able to scale up and go to the next leg of growth. So once ATC comes in, I believe that the 7,600 crore rupee plus will be going to the shareholders. Is there any kind of clarity or any kind of commitment you have as to how much of fresh liquidity ATC will put into the company?
So as of now, Viom is self-funded completely, because we generate free cash flows, and if you recall, we had over 8,000 crores of debt 3 years back. We are down to sub 5,500 crores as I speak, end of September, right? So this is through cash flows from operations that we are able to fund this down and bring down debt. At the end of this financial year, our debt to EBITDA ratios should be extremely healthy at probably sub 2.5, right, or thereabouts. So therefore, funding operations and funding growth is not such a challenge now for Viom. It is how fast you want to grow that potentially need liquidity. If the growth prospects really shoot through the roof, then yes, there will be liquidity requirements of a much higher level, and then that is when those discussions will need to happen. As of now, for the growth that we foresee, which is double-digit growth, I don't foresee a challenge.
Okay, double-digit growth. In that case, can you just, to help me simplify the financials, currently what is the EBITDA, the rental and the tenancy ratio that you have, and by how much will these three figures go up post ATC coming on board, post the integration?
So the current EBITDA, the last year just finished, is just upwards of 1,800 crores. And I see that Viom as a standalone, I can't speak for the combined entity at this stage, but Viom standalone should be looking at a double-digit kind of EBITDA growth year on year, which we continue to do and should be looking at that from here on as well, driven by growth. So yes, top-line growth delivering double-digit incremental EBITDA growth.
Will there be a change in the branding of Viom once ATC comes on board?
Too early to say about all those things, what finally will be the look and feel, etc. But I think right now we have work to do and to focus on the business.
Okay. Lastly, ATC has been looking at acquisitions across the board. This is a large acquisition, but going forward, would the combined entity look at a larger acquisition? Because if you do, you'll be to immediate player, Bharti Infratel, won't you?
So I think that the combined shareholders, once it's an integrated merged entity, will have to reevaluate and take that call as and when that happens. It's too early to talk about those things at this stage, yeah?
Okay, I'm sorry for bugging you further on this, sir, but can you give me a sense of the financials that will stand of the merged entity or of, post-integration? We're trying to understand exactly what is the kind of a leg up in terms of growth that you will see. So just a sense as to once the deal is completed, what will be the financials of Viom?
See, it's only post the reverse due diligence that those numbers will play out and will become visible. So which, like I said, will take, a good 4 to 6 months.
Okay, fair enough. Last quick question, sir, in that case. I know that listing was something that you were looking at. Now it's obviously out of the radar, or maybe 3 to 4 years from now you would look at a listing of Viom Networks as well?
Extremely futuristic right now to answer that one. But right now the focus is, focus on customers, continue to run a great company, and we'll see what happens 3-4 years down the line. I'm sure we'll touch base again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mr. Safawi, for speaking.